Hello everyone and welcome back to the next session in today's programme. I'm now joined by Ashley Borman, who is the Deputy Head of Lending, and Moises Cruikshank, Senior Business Manager, both from Keystone Property Finance. And both of them will be exploring how the latest technology helps with your specialist buy-to-let cases. In the next sort of 15 minutes during their presentation, they'll discuss the latest tools and technologies that can be used to submit a specialist buy-to-let case, and of course the benefits to you as administrators. As I say, they're going to speak for about 15 minutes, and then that will be followed by the Q&A session. I'm sure you're now perhaps familiar with that process of submitting questions, so please do fire your questions through to the web chat box as they occur to you, and I'll put those to our speakers after their presentation. You should find that question box below the presentation screen, so just type any questions you have. And of course, you can do that before the presentation finishes. They'll be queued up, ready for me to ask accordingly. But first, let me hand you over to Ashley and Moises, who will take you through the specialist buy-to-let landscape.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for your time out for your busy days. Today, I'll be talking about how the latest tools and technology can help with specialist buy-to-let cases. Okay, so a bit of background about Keystone Property Finance. We're essentially an intermediary-only specialist buy-to-let lender. So we only operate within the intermediary market. We don't operate out of any branches because we're not a bank. And what we specialise in is providing a range of client solutions for portfolio landlords, expat customers, as well as corporate structures. And we also provide a range of property solutions for landlords looking to buy HMO properties, multi-unit properties, as well as standard buy-to-let property. So why Keystone? I'm going to cover some of the key things that we get involved in on a day-to-day basis. And one of those is lending to HMO landlords. And we can essentially look at HMO properties up to 10 bedrooms. We also look at expats, and we can provide expat mortgages if they're buying as individuals or as limited companies. And our products come with no product loading. So an expat customer does not have to face any additional rating. We also lend on ex-local authority properties, and we require a 40% private ownership for ex-local authority flats. And what you can do is, if you do find you have a ex-local authority case where it's a flat, you can always give myself or the team a call, and we're quite happy to carry out a land registry report to essentially find out exactly how many leases fall within the block. That way, you know that when you put the case in, you're not going to be hit with a surprise at valuation stage where the property actually is less than 40% privately owned. We also get involved in remortgages within 6 months, and we can lend up to 100% of the original purchase price and 100% of refurbishment costs, but making sure that that does not exceed 75% of the new market value. And we also get involved in complex limited company structures and limited liability partnerships. So quite a broad scope, far and beyond what the high street are able to offer to many buy-to-let landlords. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to touch upon some of the tools and technologies that we use within the mortgage market. Now, one of the first things that we use are electronic signatures. So at the point where we issue a mortgage offer, the client will electronically sign the offer, and they will also electronically complete the direct debit and also sign the direct debit, thereby taking away one of the jobs that the broker or the broker's administrator needs to conduct. We also subscribe to the Buy-to-Let Hub by CoreLogic. And what that does is that carries out an AVM, an automated valuation, on a customer's background portfolio to make sure that we can ensure that their portfolio meets the PRA stress test that we employ. We also use LexisNexis Risk Solutions product to effectively verify an expat's ID, because the biggest challenge on expat cases is that the client is abroad. So usually they would have to have employed a notary public at some cost to be able to verify their identity. LexisNexis, all we do is we simply send a link to the applicant, they take a picture of their passport and themselves, it tallies it up in the background, and we accept that as evidence of identification. Our documents on the system are also transferable. So if you've put in one buy-to-let case and you follow that up with a subsequent buy-to-let case, let's say 4 weeks later, well, we can actually transfer the documents to the new case, and that will save you a lot of time in terms of uploading documents. We've also got an online portal, so your AIP and your full application, they're all submitted online, thereby saving you time not having to do a paper-based application. Our AIP is a soft footprint, which is beneficial to customers, and all fees are paid online via the online My Keystone portal. So there aren't any checks that you need to send off to us as a lender. We also have a claim facility. So if you've done a case for a customer and he comes back to you 3 months later and he's looking to buy additional properties, the claim facility allows you to clone the first application. Therefore, you haven't got to sit and submit another 2 full applications. We will just transfer all the information across into a new application. And what I'd like to do now is pass over to Ashley, who will carry on the theme of technology.
Thank you, Moises. Appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. So again, thanks for touching several tools, Moises. Another tool that we have here at Keystone, and many other lenders will have access to it, and it's something maybe you should look at, is something called Cammer. Now that's a system that you can type in a property's address and it will come back with plenty of data to talk about whether or not this property requires a license, what kind of license that might require. And it also touches on things like Article 4 and whether properties are required to have planning to be able to change them from a C3 to a C4. Moises has already touched on core logic very briefly, but as underwriters at Keystone, and again, various other lenders may be using this, we use core logic to be able to identify a property portfolio. So when we have a portfolio landlord, there's a stress test that we have to adhere to, and we're using this as a tool and a method to be able to verify the values of properties and the estimated rental income that that property might achieve. A very simple tool that we have to our to be able to use is Google Maps, and as basic as that may sound, there's a lot of applications that could unfortunately fall out just by using Google Maps. So I would definitely recommend, if it's very simple, it's free, always have a look at the property that you're being asked to submit to a lender. If you can see that there's commercial nearby, a lot of lenders are obviously concerned about adjacent commercial or flats above commercial. It's always a good idea to get a good understanding of what that commercial is, because some lenders will probably have a restriction in terms of LTV. So definitely use Google Maps. There's other things that you can see. If you can see it's a fairly run-down area, you may wish to consider that when obviously suggesting to instruct evaluation. You may just want to make sure that the client's absolutely sure, because if it turns out it was obviously not going to be a very good property in a good area, then perhaps that's not the right lender that's going to take that one on. Land registry, we're using this all of the time to obviously discover freehold properties, leasehold properties, and there is other facilities on land registries such as map search. You'll find that there's various properties that you simply cannot find. They might be a new build, or they're in an area that's restricted on Google Maps, or you're just not sure exactly whether it's leasehold, freehold. We've got land registry on our systems just to be able to double check that. In addition, again, Moises touched on to the ex-local flats Keystone offer. The private ownership percentage is something that you can use to try to discover how many flats have been sold off. Planning and building regulation portals. Again, this is public. This is for the public. Anyone can have access to this. So I would advise that people do look at the planning portal for local authorities. You can see what's going in. You can see if properties do meet the planning requirements that they've obviously been agreed and are permitted to adhere to. So everything there is free, so we'll be using this. But again, as administrators or mortgage brokers here, it's a good idea to have a good understanding that the property you're submitting to the lender does adhere to the rules and has the right planning. And again, EPC register, something else that's free for everyone to be using. You'll see a lot of lenders now obviously are prioritizing on efficiency and green products, and a lot of lenders are expecting EPCs to be of a minimum rating. Again, there might be beneficial products out there that your clients can take advantage of just by having, let's say, C or above on an EPC. So always use the EPC register. And again, other lenders, and including Keystone, we may not be too happy if you start seeing EPCs that are showing as an F rating or a G rating. Okay, so what are common problems which could cause delays here at Keystone and perhaps other lenders as well? Incorrect documentation certification. So we have a pre-offer department here at Keystone, obviously managing the documents that you guys send in. They're making sure that they've been certified correctly. Now, these things are obviously including your name, signatures, the firm that you might work for. But if you want a proper breakdown, you can visit Keystone's website, and you'll probably find, again, just some small research on Google. I'm sure you'll find the correct way of certifying documentation. So try and get that certified as properly as possible. Missing bank statements, we do unfortunately sometimes have to request several months bank statements. That could be to verify various different things. What we seem to find is that people may only give us a few pages of that document, and to be quite honest, we do need the full thing. We need to obviously go from start to finish. It can be seen as a concern from various lenders if you don't start providing the full document. So some advice would be just provide the full document itself, fully certified if you can, and that prevents any further delays with the case. The incorrect data input regarding client and property. This is a big one, to be honest with you, and I appreciate that there's many questions that lenders may ask on the outset when you submit an application. So it can seem a little bit daunting, and no one's expecting everyone to know everything about a case. But I think it is vital that people try their best to get all of the information as correct as possible, because if someone submits a property that's perhaps a flat and they've keyed as freehold and they're just guessing, then some lenders may kick that out immediately, and you start to cause delays just by not having that little bit of knowledge before it came in. So keep the data as correct as possible if you can. And finally, company director and shareholding structures. So we all have access to Companies House. Lenders have access to other methods such as Credit Safe and some other out there like Experian, and they'll be able to tell us the sort of directorships, the structure, who the shares are owned by, that kind of stuff. So this is important again, because if that doesn't match the lender's criteria, the case can either be delayed, there might be further questions, or finally could also be declined just on the structure itself. So use Companies House, get an idea of who the directors are, who the shareholders are, try and make sense of it yourself. Does it make sense? What the lender can ask, any other questions, that kind of stuff. And tips and tricks. So upload all information to satisfy conditions immediately. I'll speak about Keystone firstly. When you submit an application, you're going to get what's previously referred to as a little bit of a shopping list. Try to keep this as small as possible, but it's the things that are almost guaranteed going to be needed on every single application that comes in. Now, these will differ from your individual applications to your limited companies, your HMOs, your multi-units. But again, the advice is when you submit that FMA, that full mortgage application, have a look at what we're asking for, what our system generated, because 9 times out of 10, we are going to need that. So if you can provide that as quick as possible, again, by the time that the underwriter gets a chance to look at this case for the first time, we should have various different documents that we can tick off and hopefully prevent causing any further delays. Finally, here we go, utilize the real-time note function within online portals. So again, Moises touched on the portal that Keystone have. Every lender has various portals. Use the online facility. I know at Keystone here, as soon as anyone's done anything on that case, whether it's pre-offer, post-offer, coming up to completion, there will be a note on there giving you an idea of what the last thing was to happen. And if something seems to be a concern, give us a call and we can obviously try to help it where possible. To create an applicant profile on Buy-to-Let Hub for future cases and other lenders. This is important. So like I said, CoreLogic earlier, we use it as an automated valuation model to give us an idea on how that portfolio looks in comparison to the portfolio spreadsheet you may have been given by the client themselves. So we're just trying to verify that what we've been told is actually correct. Now, the beauty of this, and it's worth looking into, is if you haven't already seen CoreLogic or Buy-to-Let Hub is known as various different things, eTech to some, it's worth having a look, because if you have a client that you know you're applying to various different lenders, the majority, I would say, or at least various lenders, are using the same AVM models. So if you've already got the portfolio set up on eTech and a profile for the client, you might find it will cause less delays, and it just makes things much smoother. And finally, from my side, all the documents are downloadable. So the first most important thing is, if you go to Keystone's website and other lenders' websites, I'm sure you'll find the literature on there of the declarations and the portfolio spreadsheets, all of these things that you are going to need to complete. They should all be visible and available for you to use and download it whenever you need to. And again, any documents that are on the file itself that you've uploaded, you can see again to re-download yourself everything that you provide to Keystone. So I'll hand you back to Moises, if that's okay. And of course, if you've got any other questions, please fire away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ash. Right, so in terms of an AIP, our AIP is a very, very simple affair. We only ask for the name of the applicant / directors. We ask for their dates of birth, 3 years address history, and the name of the limited company, if applicable. You click on submit, and within a couple of seconds or so, it should come back with an accept, a decline, or a refer. If you do get a refer, we'll normally aim to deal with that within 4 working hours. And as I mentioned earlier, it is a soft footprint. In terms of registration, all you need to do is download the broker registration form or register online via the website. If you're a DA broker, download the intermediary agreement, complete it, sign it, and send it back. And you can send that back to inquiry@keystonepropertyfinance.co.uk. We'll send you out your login details, and you can then submit an AIP for your customer. Communication tools. Now, the way we communicate has certainly changed over the last 16 or so months, but you can always get in touch with us on the phone, via email, face-to-face on Zoom or Teams, or you can use the live chat facility, which we now have operating on the website. So if you're juggling kids, or if you're juggling the husband or the wife, then effectively, there's another way you can deal with us. You can do that all via the live chat. Thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate your time taken, and we hope it was a very useful presentation.
Thank you, Moises. That's fantastic. And thank you both for some fascinating insights, and obviously sort of putting together a series of places where there's a lot of information available to administrators as well as the advisor community to hopefully make their jobs slightly easier. I can see that a few questions have popped into the inbox. Just as a quick reminder to those that haven't had a chance to think of a question, you have the opportunity to do so. And as I say, just underneath your screen, there should be the chat box that you can just pop your question in, and I can take that opportunity to ask both Ashley and Moises. But just to sort of kick things off, obviously, picking through the presentation in particular, we talk about the sort of complexity of the market, the first question comes in. That's what are the 2 most common errors made in regards to documents and sort of case submission?
One for Ashley, if you're okay to answer that one for us.
Of course, yeah. So the 2 most common issues, I know it sounds brief, but certification is an issue, to be honest with you. It becomes an issue because, again, if it's not done correctly, unfortunately, lenders, they may be, I think there's a standard way of obviously certifying documents. I think that's the most important thing. And if the smallest of things are missing, that really does cause delay. So I would say one of the biggest things is certification. And I know that's so brief, so I apologize. But if people can look at maybe, just use Keystone, for example, what it is that we expect, and it's all on the Keystone website of what we want as a minimum to see, just to verify that we're trusting you that you've seen the document itself. So we're asking for the information and you just to sort of back that up. The second common mistake, I think, that might cause delays is probably the data entry. Again, a very broad topic, and I know we don't have too much time, but if you can understand as much as possible about this application yourself, it will make the process much smoother, 100%. And I think if anyone's rushing through and submitting an application, and I hate to say it, but if anyone's guessing the answers, it can cause significant delays and also can raise concerns for lenders. So my advice would be to know your customer, obviously that's most important, but understand as much as you can, whether it's go to company's house, if you have the ability to check down registry. Those are the common mistakes, I think, and these cause delays. And finally, on that point then, I think if there's any way that people can present an application, like bring in maybe a small summary of what you do know about this and why they're doing what they're doing, or if there's anything quirky, you're upfront about these things, the chances are underwriters will probably find something quirky. If you're open and honest from the start, we can always try to work around that, find a solution. And I think those are the two main mistakes. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I guess as a sort of slightly related question as well, sort of picking up on what you're saying, both on document certification, but also, we are working now more so than ever in a digital environment. The next question is, do you have any advice on how to move documents, I guess, e.g. property portfolios online from their paper originals? Now, this, I guess, could be a point from an operational point of view. I mean, physically, how you do that, whether it's easy. I don't know whether you guys have sort of elements of that, or helping in terms of elements of that, shifting people's portfolios, which is obviously a sort of big ask. Or I don't know whether this particularly sort of, points towards maybe, fraud as well, or avoiding fraud, in the sense that, as you sort of just said, Ash, working digitally, we're perhaps, delivering documentations digitally and perhaps not seeing or making sure you're seeing and certifying the original.
Yeah, I'll just carry on if that's okay, Moises, for a second. I think it's tough because obviously, like you say, the generation that we're in, the age that we're in now, everything seems to be done online. So if you have things that are paper-based, then there's nothing stopping you, obviously, just from copying that and uploading it as a PDF, as a document. We are going to accept these things, and if, let's say you have a small portfolio and there's 3, 4, 5 properties on it, but you have a paper copy of a portfolio, obviously, ideally, it's probably a good idea to have that on an Excel spreadsheet, because you can use that generically with most other lenders. But again, if you send that in, there would be no problem with us just converting that into an Excel spreadsheet for you, submitting it through the e-tech. If that helps as well, then we can. There are solutions to that. But I think genuinely, if you have paper stuff, scanning it in, sending it as a PDF, those are the right ways. I mean, I'm definitely not that technical, but I'm not sure how you turn a paper document into an Excel spreadsheet. I've no idea. But again, send the PDF in, and we'll do what we can our side.
Perfect, thank you. I'm afraid you've been asked to look into your crystal balls now, and the next question is based on, I guess, that evolution of technology, and the question is, where do you see technology for mortgage applications going forward in the future? You mentioned, obviously, there's several things that you use at the moment, such as electronic signatures, advanced ID checks that you can use. Do you have any predictions or knowledge of things that perhaps are coming down the line in the future that's going to make everybody's life that much easier?
Yeah, if I can take that one, Ash. What we're seeing at the moment is we're seeing a bit of an evolution in terms of the way mortgage brokers submit applications. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention third-party providers, but I will anyway. There's a company called 27 Tech, and they're one of a number of sourcing systems. Again, we've got Mortgage Brain. It'd be fair to mention them as well, and Trigold. But 27 Tech, what they're currently involved in is a scenario where you would key in using your fact-finding system as a broker, all the client's details. You would then press a button that would take you into the sourcing of the mortgage product on 27 Tech. The 27 Tech system would then provide you with the KFI. You would then click another button, and what that would do is that will transpose everything that the broker has keyed on his original facts find into our world. So the benefit for the broker is that he's only got to key a client's information once, because the idea is that it follows through and it transmits at the lender. So as a result, there's less keying. Now, that will save a lot of time. We've also seen a lot of brokers using artificial intelligence, AI. One of those mortgage brokers, I believe, is, remember their name, is it MQ? And the basis behind what they do is that you send them pay slips, etc., etc. They get uploaded, and the artificial intelligence, i.e. a sort of super duper computer, analyzes that information. So effectively, it's touching less hands. So what that means is that, yes, you have got an underwriter at the other end, but from their perspective, you've got less hands touching the paperwork, and the computer seems to be kind of verifying all the data. So how it works, I don't quite know, but I'm sure that the technology is there to be able to kind of verify the employer. They may have APIs, which are like converters that might go into company's house to see that the company does exist. So I think when we enter the world of artificial intelligence, I know we kind of see it on sci-fi films, but I think these are things that are kind of coming down the line. And I think that will apply to a lot of roles and, apply to a lot of processes in the mortgage market. So, yeah, I think it's a case to watch this space.
Fantastic. We don't want to scare anybody to say that we're going to be replaced by robots, but that's always useful to know what's coming down the line. The next couple of questions are very specific, so we'll just quickly run through those. The first of those is, can the live chat facility be used to discuss existing, i.e. already submitted applications for you at Keystone, or is this designed for pre-application queries only?
Yeah, if I can take that one, actually. The live chat is purely designed for discussing new cases or for finding out information, for example, what's your rental calculation, where do I find a copy of the direct debit, for example, but we cannot discuss any client details because that would be contrary to GDPR.
Perfect. And the second very specific question is, do you use top slicing as part of your calculations?
No, top slicing isn't something we use. However, just as a bit of a spin-off, if your client is buying a property in his personal name, if he's he or she a basic rate taxpayer, then we can offer 125% for individual cases, or if they're high rate taxpayers, it would be 145%.
Perfect. And I can see another question sort of dropped in. What's your policy on dealing with expats directors in a UK-based SPV that have been formed specifically for property investment? What documents would be required by them to be verified?
It's one for Ash.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Great question. And we're seeing more and more now that we're getting a lot of expat applications, which I find personally much more interesting, to be honest, because you get to see what's going on. The good thing about this is that this is expected now. We're finding more and more people are creating limited company, SPVs more specifically, creating a company to hold and retain a property here in the UK. The important thing is we lend on properties in the UK. So some of the things that we're going to ask for, they need to be an experienced landlord. That's the first and most important thing. They need to have at least one buy-to-let here in the UK, and they ideally need to have declared that rental income to HMRC, as everyone should, for at least 1 year. That's what we like to see. So we're asking for these people to have paid UK income tax if it was a liability and they had to. If they've declared it and they haven't, then that's also fine. We just need to see that process happening. So what documents do we need? So we're asking for the portfolio spreadsheet. We're already spoken about IDU, which is now the way in trying to verify that applicant rather than having to get a passport signed by whoever in that foreign country. And the process used to be quite long, and now it's much, much easier, which is great. We want the SA302s here in the UK, supported by a tax year overview. And again, that's just to evidence that they've declared that rental income that they should have, basically. The employment is a big thing. That ideally they're employed by a multinational company, so we're asking for pay slips. There's no P60 most of the time, nothing like that, but there's normally an equivalent summary that we might be able to get. And And that's really it. There's an employer's letter that will tick off the proof of residency, and that's one of the biggest things, is we're asking for this employer to provide a letter confirming where that individual lives, how long they've lived there for, and what their role, and maybe even what their salary is, just to give us a good idea. So it's typically no different than any other application, to be completely honest with you, apart from they are obviously abroad. And please don't treat the SPV side of things, again, like a complicated thing. As long as they're a director of that limited company, and hopefully they're the 100% shareholder, that's always the preferred route, obviously. There are sometimes third-party shareholders that we will look into, give it if they have a certain percentage shares. But the important thing is we lend to the directors only. So if you've got applicants on there, they must be directors. And again, if they're not applicants and they are directors, they need to resign, or we can't lend to them, basically. So I hope that answers that question.
Perfect. Thank you, Ashley. Sadly, in the interest of time and me keeping to time, I do have to bring the session to a close. I mean, that's been a fascinating discussion, so thank you both. For those people who have submitted a question and we haven't had time to get round it, or I haven't had time to get round to ask both Ashley and Moises, please be assured that that question will be passed straight through to the guys, and they can answer that directly with you. I hope everybody's enjoyed this session. Thanks, of course, to all of those people who did submit a question, and particular thanks, of course, to Ashley and Moises. The next session in the agenda is at 2 o'clock, which covers career change and progression. And that session will sort of cover a broad understanding of different roles in the market, whether that's underwriting, senior administration and management roles, and hopefully offer an insight into your potential career progression and how to, I guess, critically obtain those qualifications through structured courses to take that next step in your career. So please make sure you come back for that one at 2 o'clock. But for now, thank you again to Ashley and Moises, and it's goodbye from us.